We live in a world that is basically designed to steal our focus. So, in that world, there's one skill that's becoming the absolute key to not just surviving, but actually thriving. Today, we are diving deep into Cal Newport's game changing idea of deep work. Think of it as the superpower you need to conquer distraction and, finally produce your absolute best work. So, let's just start with a question that, well, it might sting a little. Seriously, think about it. When was the last time, an entire hour, no phone check? If you're like most of us, the answer is probably, I can't remember. And that simple question, it reveals this huge problem that we are all facing, a problem that is just quietly killing our potential.
All right, let's get into it. The first part of our diagnosis is what we can call the crisis of distraction. It's the state of constant, kind of low-level panic and busyness that our modern work culture has tricked us into thinking is normal.
Does this sound familiar? You're constantly busy, right? Juggling a dozen tasks, answering pings, emails, Slacks, but you get to the end of the day and you feel like you've accomplished, well, nothing of real value. Cal Newport has a name for this. He calls it frenetic shallowness. It's basically a state where we've forgotten how to truly, deeply think.
And this slide, this right here, it perfectly frames the core conflict of our work lives. Over on one side, you've got deep work. That's the focused, concentrated effort that creates breakthroughs. And on the other side, shallow work. That's the busy work, the emails, the meetings that just fill our days. The big problem is that most of us are spending our lives stuck in that shallow end of the pool. So look, the crucial point here is that a life of shallow work isn't just inefficient, it's genuinely dangerous for your career. It literally rewires your brain to be worse at concentrating. Being busy becomes this cheap substitute for actually being effective, and we slowly lose the ability to create anything of real, lasting value.
Okay, but here's the good news. In this world that is just drowning in distraction, the ability to focus isn't just some nice-to-have skill anymore. It is a massive competitive advantage. It's basically a modern-day superpower. And this slide explains a huge reason why that's true. Have you ever checked your email for just a second while working on a big project, and then found it almost impossible to get back in the zone? Well, that's a real thing. It's called attention residue. A little piece of your brain is still stuck thinking about that email, which means you're operating at a fraction of your full cognitive horsepower. Multitasking is a total myth, and it is costing you dearly.
Now, on the flip side, when you do engage in deep work, you're doing so much more than just being productive. You are physically changing your brain. I mean it. Intense focus builds this fatty tissue called myelin around your neurons, and that lets them fire faster and more efficiently. It's literally a high-intensity workout for your mind, making it stronger, faster, and smarter.
And here is the bottom line, straight from Cal Newport himself. In an economy that rewards really high-value, hard-to-replicate skills, the ability to work deeply is becoming more and more scarce. And in any market, what's rare becomes incredibly valuable. So if you can cultivate this skill, you're not just going to survive, you are going to thrive. Okay, so how do we actually do this? The great thing is, there isn't just one single way. Newport actually outlines 4 different philosophies you can adopt to make deep work a real part of your life. So let's break them down. So you could go full monastic and just cut out almost all the shallow work. Or you could be bimodal, splitting your year or your week into deep periods and shallow periods. The rhythmic approach is really popular. It makes it a daily habit, which is great for beginners. And then finally, you've got the journalistic method, which is more for the experts who can just drop into deep work on a moment's notice. The key here is to find the philosophy that actually fits your life. And listen, this isn't some new age productivity hack. The greatest thinkers have always done this kind of thing. Carl Jung, for example, lived a bimodal life. He had a super busy clinical practice in the city, but then he would just retreat to a stone tower that he built himself. No electricity, no running water, just to do his deepest, most profound thinking. So choosing a philosophy, that's step 1. The next step is to actively train your brain. You really have to start treating your ability to concentrate like it's a muscle, and that muscle needs a serious workout. And Newport does not pull any punches here. He says if you can't tolerate even a single moment of boredom without reaching for a distraction, your brain's focus muscle has basically turned to flab, right? You wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training, so why on earth would you expect to concentrate for hours if your brain is totally out of shape? Okay, so here's your training plan. First, start by embracing boredom. When you're in line at the grocery store, just wait. Let your mind be still. Second, practice productive meditation. tackle a single work problem in your head while you're on a walk with no phone. And third, try scheduling your internet time. This totally flips the script. Instead of taking breaks from distraction, you take scheduled breaks from focus.
Now, a really crucial part of this whole workout is rest, and that's where a shutdown ritual becomes absolutely non-negotiable. At the end of your workday, plan for tomorrow, and then consciously out loud declare that you are done. Saying a simple phrase like shutdown complete, it sounds silly, but it signals to your brain that it's okay to stop processing work, which lets you truly recharge for the next day.
All right, so your mind is in training. The final piece of the puzzle is to actually architect your day to protect that precious deep work time and aggressively, ruthlessly minimize the shallow stuff.
I want you to stop living by your to-do list. That is a recipe for a reactive, chaotic day. Instead, give every single minute of your day a job. This is called time blocking. You plan your entire schedule, deep work, shallow work, even breaks, and you move from defense to offense. You are telling your time where to go instead of just wondering where it went.
So what's the end goal here? Well, for a lot of us, it might look something like this chart. But the point is to be intentional. First, do an audit on yourself. How much of your day right now is shallow? Then, create a budget for it. You gotta treat shallow work like calories. You need some to function, sure, but too many will totally derail your bigger goals. And finally, we get to what might be the hardest part of all this. You have to protect your time. Every single time you say yes to a meeting that could have been an email or yes to a quick question that completely derails your focus, you are implicitly saying no to the deep, meaningful work that is actually going to move your career forward. So I'll leave you with this. After everything we've just covered, take a really hard look at your life and ask yourself this one fundamental question. Are you the architect of your day, intentionally building a life of focus and meaning? Or are you just letting the endless pings and notifications of a shallow world dictate your potential? The choice and the superpower that comes with it is yours.